Okay, so let's do a quick recap on what we have covered 2 weeks before. So 2 weeks before we actually covered the concept of cover and vault, right? Okay, so first of all, cover. What does, before looking at the book, before you are busy looking at the book, okay, what is that? Give me a second. Let me close this first. Sometimes it's the OneNote that's having some issue. Cover and vault. Right, so this was covered 2 weeks back. Okay, can you all tell me what does cover represents? Okay, what is it used to represent? What's the concept behind cover? Concept, remember? Concept. Everything has a concept. And this wasn't particularly well shown in your mock exam. Okay, we are concerned about benefits of trade. Okay, and vault stands for cost of trade. So that before we look at the book, remember, once you look at the book, it means that everything goes down the drain. Try to recall on your own. Okay, what does cover stands for? Okay, alphabet by alphabet. C, come. Okay, let's try to utilize the chat function. C stands for what? Cannot. Okay, I mean, I have 3 screens, right? Okay, one of the screen definitely have answer. Even I myself also try not to look at the answer. Okay, it simply tells us that there will be greater world consumption and output, or greater production, right? Okay, as a result of theory of comparative advantage and specialization. So these two are, okay, you must use the table, okay, and the theory of CA to illustrate that, right? Okay, what else? What does V stands for? I cannot be filling up all the gaps for you. Right? V, okay, good, variety. Okay, so with trade, it comes with a variety of goods and services. What about E and R? What does E stands for? It stands for economic growth, or some schools actually use this concept of engines of growth. Okay, meaning to say trade can promote growth, okay, through higher AD, right? Or potentially trade can lower your import costs, okay, and this will cause your AS curve to experience a downward shift. Okay, these two approaches are acceptable, okay, so long as related to trade. Okay, and the last one, okay, is a micro concept. We are heading to this micro concept very soon. Sorry, not revenue. Okay, it stands for reap what? Reap. Reap EOS, economies of scale. So it simply means that, okay, you want to, okay, specialize and you're able to produce at a lower production cost or average cost. Okay, so I will be heading this concept in the year one lessons. Okay, starting from next week onwards. Okay, the year 1 classes will be moving on to firms and decision. So this is traditionally the hardest topic for the first year. Okay, so the second years, normally from past experience, they will be busy booking. So to avoid, I don't want to digress, but to avoid, not being able to get into a class, make sure you book early. Okay, so this is what we call benefits of trade. We have your benefits. Okay, what about vault? What does vault stands for? Later on, this will be covered in the quiz. Okay, so make sure you're able to cover that. What does vault stands for? Or rather, what does it represent? Okay, if the left side represents benefits, the right side has to cover costs. What's another word for costs? Come on. Okay, so this is also apparently not quite evident in your mock exam. Consequence, good, and concerns of trade. So today we'll be relooking this. Okay, and when we cover protectionism, arguments for protectionism, the concepts that we use here can also be used for protectionism as well. Okay, arguments. So these two concepts are actually stacked together. And what does V stands for? V stands for not variety, right? Cannot be variety, right? See, so quiet. Okay, this class is one of the most quietest class, so it means that something must be really wrong. Okay, you're vulnerable to external shocks. Okay, and it simply means that you're also overly reliant on imports. Right, so V and O, okay, if you were to look around, okay, there's a very particular recent example that happened to you, Singapore, right? Okay, what was the most encompassing example? Good. At least some of you are quite concerned, okay, about chicken. Chicken is the biggest talk in the recently. Chicken, okay, right? Export ban. Okay, what does W stands for? Okay, it stands for it could potentially worsen your balance of payment, especially when there's persistent import expenditure or outflow. Okay, so it could work both ways. On one end, it could promote economic growth or engines of growth. On the other end, if import exceeds export, okay, revenue, then okay, it could worsen balance of payment. Okay, so moving on to V and O, okay, for my schooling friends, listen carefully. This is likely to come out for your prelims. Okay, V and O, these two alphabets. Okay, and the chicken saga is likely to come out for your prelims. Okay, that's my tip for all my schooling friends. Non-schooling friends, okay, no need to be too concerned. What does E stands for? What is undesirable about E? Okay, it stands for structural unemployment. Okay, especially when there's import substitution. Okay, when particular imports disrupt a particular industry. Okay, and okay, the particular industries workers do not have a skill set to go into another sector. Okay, usually it's a sunset industry. And then this will lead to what? Structural unemployment. Yeah, so later on we'll be using concept of sunset and sunrise as well. Very good. Okay, someone already fast forward to D. Demerit goods. Okay, import of demerit goods is going to worsen health, that kind of thing, and it can worsen your non-material standard of living. Okay. So later on, okay, this will be covered in depth, and I will be moving on to patterns of trade (POT). Now, okay, for patterns of trade, okay, we are particularly concerned about three aspects. Can you all let me know what are the three aspects that patterns of trade is concerned about? Sorry, nothing to do with Metro. Metro is the assumption for comparative advantage. I believe you get it confused. Patterns of trade. Okay, good, Aiden. Very, very good. How much? Okay, which are the other two? How much goods and services are exchanged in the form of import and export? What about the other two? Okay, great, Aiden. Continue. Okay, what? Okay, what's the composition of the good? Okay, within your how much? Okay, we need to know what is imported and exported as well, right? The last one. Nope, no, nothing to do with price. Okay, whom? Right, our trading partner. Who are we dealing with? Okay, so in a nutshell, how much we are concerned about volume. Okay, what we are concerned about composition of a trade. and whom you're concerned about direction of trade. Okay, so your earlier assignment on patterns of trade, I want you all to revise these three components. It has to relate to volume, composition, or direction. So today when we learn protectionism, okay, we are going to emphasize on direction. Okay, protectionism is imposed or enforced on a particular country. Then it will affect the volume and the composition. Yeah, I'm not sure why Spadine is so excited outside. She probably wants in. Okay, but anyway, okay, if there's a chance, I will show you guys her. I'm gonna go out to scold her soon. She keep barking outside. But anyway, okay, now tell me. Okay, what is the acronym that we use to describe pattern? Or rather, before we go to the acronym, okay, hold on to the acronym first. Okay, there are two particular ways to illustrate patterns of trade. Okay, do you still remember? It starts with the I word. Patterns of trade can be illustrated using these two I words. Still remember? So many things, right? You guys will be asking me, but no choice. All these, no, the two I words. Okay, let me give you a hint. All right. So starts with inter, and the second starts. Once I give you the first one, you'll get the inter and intra industry trade. Okay, so we are particularly concerned about inter and intra-industry trade. Inter-industry are looking at trade between different industries. Or intra-industries, differentiated industries. Are you familiar with the concept of different and differentiated? Okay, different means different goods. Differentiated means similar goods. Okay, same industries. Alright, so we have Fitbit. Okay, so we use earlier on we use inter-industry. We use Fitbit. Okay, so sorry why I run out of space. Maybe let's see if I can scroll down. Auto extension. Fitbit. Okay, so later on Fitbit will be tested. Okay, can you all tell me what does Fitbit stands for? Inter-industry. I save you all the trouble. What does F stands for? Okay, remember, okay, when we want to uncover how does trade occurs within different industry, okay, this is the acronym that we use, right? So these are the 6 components that affect, okay, trade between different industries. So what does all of this stands for? Okay, we can break it down into two halves, fit and bid. Okay, so F stands for, okay, your factor endowment, right? Why is your factor endowment important? Your factor endowment will determine your source of comparative advantage. Your source of comparative advantage will result in opportunity cost, not production cost, opportunity cost. Okay, and it will decide, okay, which are the goods that you should export and which are the goods that you should import due to differing opportunity costs. So based on theory of CA, it tells us that the country should import goods that they have higher opportunity costs and export goods that they have relatively lower opportunity costs in production. So this is the most important factor. Okay, we also have, what does I stands for? Okay, it stands for income level. Good, Ravati. So it simply tells us that, okay, when depending on the income level of a particular country, okay, there could be a greater demand for luxury goods, okay, necessity good, or a fall in demand of inferior good. Okay, so your income level will determine especially how much and what you import. Okay, taste and preference. Okay, so I and T are particularly similar to what we uncovered under your demand framework, Egypt. Or taste and preference will also shape, okay, what you are going to import, how much you are going to import. Alright, so BIT, okay, actually is slightly different from FIT. Okay, it simply tells us what? Okay, what are some of the things that inhibits trades? Barriers of trade. Okay, today we'll be looking at a couple of barriers of trade. Okay, what blocks trade? Okay, today this is our focus. We'll be looking at imperfect market. Okay, and we're looking at transport costs, when transport cost is normally not negligible. Okay, so out of all these 6, okay, F is the most important. We actually saw this in the last week's assignment. So we'll take another look at last week's assignment. Okay, so intra-industry trade is hardly tested. Okay, but okay, for the sake of revision, let's go through that again. So you can see, okay, cover, vault. Make sure you are familiar with this. Okay, later on will be tested, especially vault. Today will come out again. Okay, inter-industry trade, we have Fitbit. Okay, and intra-industry trade, okay, we have preference of different quality and variety of the product, or what we call differentiated goods, and to exploit economies of scale and specialize. Okay, this one are hardly tested. Most of the time is this one. Okay, so I want you all to focus especially on factor endowment. Okay, that determines your comparative advantage. Okay, and whatever answer that you are going to structure, make sure it's related to how much, who, and what you trade. Okay, so with this, okay, we will kickstart with a quiz. Okay, so I will pull out the quiz. I'll pull out the quiz detail. Okay, so please join me in this quiz. This is not difficult, but it requires you to know all the acronyms by heart. Okay, so like I said, it's not difficult, but it requires you to know the acronyms. So make sure you scan through the book one more time. Okay, when you're ready, go. Well done, everyone. Giveaway, right? Mr. Teo is seldom so generous, right? See, another giveaway question. Yes. Another giveaway. You will get something wrong way. Okay, so I'll quickly run through. Okay, what are the earlier options? Okay, so for those who didn't get it right, please pay attention. So what is not an example of benefits of trade? Okay, so trade deficit is not going to be a benefit. Okay, the rest are actually under your cover. Okay, yeah, correct. So what is not an example of cost of free trade? This one is slightly different from what we cover under VALT. VALT, we never use market dominance. Okay, but market dominance is also considered, okay, as a cause of free trade. Okay, so the concept behind market dominance is, okay, foreign firms, okay, especially foreign imports, okay, they disrupt domestic production, okay, with cheap imports. Okay, and they actually establish market dominance, okay, in the domestic market. Okay, so yes, demand deficient unemployment is not a cause of free trade. So like I said, cover and VALT is just a framework to help you to better understand and learn the concept. But there are definitely other factors on top of cover and VALT, okay, that's going to, okay, affect your benefits and cost of trade. Now, what is the acronym used? Okay, cover. Okay, I don't think I use any other things. This is question 4, right? Okay, and VALT. And just someone choose vowel. I don't know what. Is it fat fingers or what? Okay, I think you know better. Okay, pattern of trade is concerned about how much, who or which our trading partners, and composition of our exports and imports, which is all of the above. What is the most used factor to illustrate patterns of trade? Most used okay, inter-industry. Okay, the other two are hardly used. Okay, so no Fitbit by heart. What is the acronym used? Fitbit. Okay, I believe everyone got it right. What is not an example of inter-industry trade, you see? Okay, differentiated goods means that they are similar. So this is intra-industry trade. Okay, so the rest, okay, the red one stands for F, factor endowment. Okay, different factor endowment result in different opportunity costs. Okay, taste and preference. Okay, trade barriers. Okay, the 4 tables and theory of CA is usually used, okay, especially to illustrate inter-industry trade. Okay, so make sure you are able to identify the situation to use them. Normally, unless it's intra-industry, then you don't use that. Intra-industry trade, okay, states that trade will occur across different industries. False, different means that it is inter-industry. Okay, different, not differentiated. Okay, so I don't know whether you guys got it or saw wrongly. Okay, so overall, it's not a difficult quiz. Okay, just that sometimes students can be a little bit careless. Okay, so with that, okay, I'm going to kickstart today's objective. If you have any questions for me, please put it up on the chat. So today, okay, we'll be learning protectionism. So based on what I've seen earlier on from the earlier class, okay, it seems to me like none of y'all have learned protectionism yet, right? Yeah? Can I have a quick... Aiden haven't learned yet, right? Okay, haven't. Okay, so this is probably a huge question mark. Okay, because this topic has been buried for the last 2 years. And you have my assurance that it will not be buried again. Okay? Okay, so make sure whatever that you don't understand today, make a mental note. Especially for those who are schooling. Okay, when they cover this somewhere in term 3, then it will complete your understanding. Okay, for those who are self-schooling, okay, make sure you really get whatever that's covered today. Okay, and I'm your best friend, to us. Okay, so this is a 3-part series. Okay, the very first part, we have learned about theory of comparative advantage. Okay, and the op-cost table, 4 tables. The second series we covered cover and vault. Oh, Mr. Teo, I'm blocking. So sorry, I forgot to tune on. I forgot to change my scene. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, I need to change my scene. You realize that there's a okay, thanks for reminding me that. Okay, sometimes I forgot to transit. Yeah. Okay, as I was saying, this is a 3-part series. The second part was what we covered 2 weeks back. Okay, the benefits and costs of free trade, as well as patterns of trade. So today will be the last part. Okay, it will be the protectionism part. Okay, so we are looking at what we'll be looking out. Why is trade undesirable, and why is there a need to protect? Protect what, and how to protect. Okay, so when I look at protectionism, later on I'll insert a proper definition. Okay, our key concern here is how are we going to block imports today? There are also exceptions from this definition, which I'm going to show you in a short while. Okay, so I'll be covering tools to inhibit trade. Okay, inhibit means to slow down trade. Okay, today our emphasis will be on import tariffs. Okay, this is by far the most common diagram used. Okay, I'm not going to show you import quotas. They are actually, just know the concept is good enough. You don't need to know the diagram, but I'm going to show you some typo error in the guidebook. Okay, it's a very slight one. I will bring to your attention what do you need to know about policies that are related to protectionism. Okay, so we no longer use the demand management or supply side policies approach. Okay, we use expenditure switching and expenditure reducing policies approach. So this is how we want to group policies. Okay, especially we're talking about protectionism or balance of trade. Okay, balance of payment, balance of trade. Okay, so pay attention. Protectionism and balance of trade, okay, they normally comes in together. Okay, and if you're particularly weak in these 2 topics, then you got to be careful. Okay, when questions are said like that, okay, it could be quite disastrous if you don't know any of that. Okay, and item 6, I'll be going through why is there a need to protect. Okay, why is there a need not to protect? Okay, for and against. Okay, so everything has a flip side of the same coin, in other words. Okay, I'm going to show you some present and past examples of protectionism. Okay, followed up by how is it going to be tested in exam. Clear? Okay, and if time permits, I will probably set a lecture test or guided practice, okay, on an essay question that's based on trade. Okay, if time permits. Okay, this is something that I want to focus on because it hasn't been the focus for the past 2 years. So there's a good chance that there is a resurgence of all these trade topics. Alright. Okay, so with this, okay, I'm going to go on with the definition. So if you have your book, okay, let us flip to page 133. Everyone, 133. Okay, so protectionism. Protectionism, okay, we are looking out for what? Okay, a few things to look out for. Number 1, okay, we are looking at sheltering or shielding of domestic firms from foreign competition. Okay, when we mean foreign competition, we normally mean foreign imports. Okay, and we are using trade barriers to limit free trade or to limit imports. Clear? So a few keywords to take note. Okay, we are sheltering domestic firms, okay, from foreign competition. So you have to know, okay, these are the two parties involved, domestic and foreign. Okay, so especially for trade, you need to be very familiar with domestic and foreign. Okay, and today we'll be illustrating some use of trade barriers. All right. So make sure you know the definition by heart. Okay, we are going to move on to tools to inhibit trade. Okay, so this one please copy down. Okay, it's not in the book. Okay, you can copy down somewhere, maybe below here. Okay, up to you. Okay, up to you where you want to copy. Okay, so some of the tools to inhibit trade. Okay, today we'll be looking at import tariffs. Okay, import tariff simply means tax on imports. Okay, so later on I will show you how does imposing a tax on import, okay, is going to drive up the price of imports, okay, and it's going to lower the quantity demanded for imports. Okay, with a diagram purpose. So this one is arguably the most important one. I'm going to bold this, very, very important. Okay. So the whole idea behind trade is to look out for our balance of trade. Okay, I'll show you how I'll show you right now. X minus M. Okay, so we want to maximize the value of X minus M. Okay, so most of this will target one of the component. Some of these will target both X and M. So when we look at import tariff, we want to lower imports. Okay, through raising the price of your imports and lowering quantity demanded of your imports. Okay, next, okay, we want to look out for your import quotas. Okay, import quotas simply means setting a absolute value of the quotas that you can import. Okay, usually quota is way lower than what you used to import. Okay, so in this way, this is another way to limit your imports. Okay, so some of the schools cover it with a diagram, most of the schools don't. Alright, so later on, okay, I will possibly skip the diagram. If there's anything that you're not sure when your school covers that, you can actually ask me privately. So there are a lot more. Okay, you can see that the last one, okay, no, the third one, currency restriction. Okay, currency restriction means what? Okay, it simply means that there is currency control. Okay, currency control simply means that it's going to restrict domestic access to foreign currency. Okay, and when there is there's a restriction of access to foreign currency, it means that you cannot acquire foreign import. Okay, so this is another way to inhibit your import. Okay, so this is widely used in China, okay, especially countries with currency or capital control. Okay, so this is one way to inhibit trade. And not so much in modern days countries, okay, but in some countries like China, okay, where there's capital control. Okay, so another one that is not very applicable in modern days is what we call VERs, okay, voluntary export restraint. Okay, this is in short VER. So if you read through your notes, okay, if you read the example, they always use the example of Japanese and Americans. Okay, so back in the 80s, okay, the Americans is actually running a very huge balance of trade deficit, okay, against Japan because they've been buying a lot of Japanese car. Okay, so the US government actually pressured Japan, okay, to what? Okay, to ask them to restrain on their exports. Okay, don't sell me so many things. I don't need too many Japanese cars. Can you believe that kind of thing still works? It only works, okay, if one country exercise a specific control over the other in some way or another, politically, or economically. Okay, it could work. Okay, but in these days, hardly work anymore. Okay, so this is also another form of inhibiting your import. Okay, through the illustration of moral, you can see this as a moral suasion. Don't sell me too many goods, please. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few more. Okay, these are some that are actually a lot more popular. Export subsidies. Okay, export subsidies, listen carefully. Export subsidies is granted on domestic goods. Okay, it's actually granted on domestic goods to let them have an unfair advantage when they compete abroad. Okay, so later on, we'll be using the concept of dumping. Okay, what happens when foreign competitors receive illegal subsidies from their government? Okay, and they flood the domestic market with cheap imports. Okay, on the flip side, domestic government can also subsidize domestic exports and flood other countries. Okay, so export subsidies is primarily targeting at raising your exports. Okay, remember, whatever that we discuss here is used to maximize the value of X minus M. Okay? So currency manipulation, two simultaneous effects. Okay, it can raise your exports and reduce your imports. Through what? Okay, through a depreciation. So currency manipulation is only applicable for countries that adopts fixed exchange rate or managed float, or what we call exchange rate targeting. Okay, they can devalue or depreciate their currency. So not all countries are able to so-called manipulate their currencies. Only specific countries that adopt exchange rate targeting can choose to depreciate or devalue their currency. Okay, and we have learned this under Marshall-Lerner condition, right? Okay, what happens when there's a depreciation? I'm not going to go there again. Okay, you guys can decipher what's going to happen here. All right. Okay, so the last one is a trade embargo. What does an embargo means? Without Googling. What does an embargo means? Embargoes are restraints. Okay, so embargo is actually a very severe form of quota. It simply means a trade ban. Okay, so there will be no more. Okay, there will be zero imports. Okay, you cannot buy goods or you cannot sell goods to the other country. Okay, so far, trade embargo has been imposed on countries like which countries? In modern days, Iran, North Korea, and those that actually play around with nukes, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, Russia not so yet. Russia is still under sanctions. Okay, quite close to embargo already. Quite close. Okay, so today we'll be looking at import tariff. Clear? Very, very important. Okay, please don't be caught falling asleep. Okay, so now import tariff. Okay, I'm going to illustrate the diagram of how it works. Okay, this is probably one of the few times that you guys are seeing the diagram. Okay, so please stick with me. Okay, so when you're ready, please flip to page 138, everyone. Yeah, accept your fate. Okay, so I will verbally narrate how it works. Okay, but my emphasis is on the diagram. Okay, so you can read how it works on your own. Okay, I will be following the narration more or less the same. Okay, so now let's consider this to be a country there is. Okay, so this is a domestic country. Okay, so let's say this is what good do you want to use? Let's say US Steels. Steel industry. Right? Okay, so the very first thing that we want to look out for, is number one, what framework do we need to use? So for import tariff, we will be using demand and supply. We won't be using AD and AS here. So this is one of the few times that we will be going back to demand and supply. Clear? Okay, so now, a lot of diagrams here. I don't need you to be overwhelmed. I'll highlight to you step by step. So the very first two diagrams that you need to know is our standard demand and supply diagram, right? Okay, so we can see that this is the supply of domestic steel. Okay, and this is the demand for domestic steel. Okay, so cumulatively, okay, we will have your price of your US steel and quantity of your US steel. Okay, in the absence of everything. Okay, and anything that's happening to trade haven't started yet. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward. Okay, the intersection of the demand and supply will tell you the price and your quantity of your US steel. Is everyone clear? Now, okay, here is how the magic is going to start. Now, suppose that US is going to engage in trade with another country. Okay, so now tell me, which country probably has a lower opportunity cost in steel production than US? Maybe China, maybe South America, countries that have an endowment of resources, right? Especially minerals. Okay, so when US actually get involved with free trade with countries like China, let's use China for instance. We can see that the supply of Chinese steels into United States, I'm going to draw this, will be this. Okay, so let me repeat. Why is your supply curve perfectly horizontal, and lower price than your US steel? Number one, here we got to make the assumption that Chinese steels, they probably enjoy a lower opportunity cost in production, right? Agreed? This is a reasonable assumption. And therefore, with a low opportunity cost, probably this will translate in some form of cost advantage, and a lower price. And the next assumption that we need to make is that, the inventories, of the Chinese steels is sufficiently huge, such that it is perfectly elastic. It does not respond, or rather, you realize that, it's perfectly elastic. So it's not, you realize that when it's perfectly elastic, it means that for every change in your price of your quantity supply is going to result, or rather, PS stands for what? Let's look here again. We are looking at, if you look here, perfectly price elastic, right? So just now the assumption is there is a sufficient large number of inventories. So if your PS is infinitely huge, it tells us that it's very responsive to price changes, right? Exceptionally responsive to price changes, right? For your quantity supply, for every change in price. Okay? So this is the assumption that we need to make. Number one, the Chinese steel producers have a lower op cost. That's why price is lower. And next, we have to assume that the market supply or the import supply of Chinese steel is going to be perfectly price elastic because of a infinitely huge number of inventories. US can buy as much as they like, at a lower price. So this is what it simply means. Is everyone clear so far? So moving on, I want you to focus on this. The supply of US, in the presence of trade. I'm going to erase the blue color line here. I hope. And I'm going to erase the red color line here. Okay. So I want you all to follow me closely. So you can see that this is the origin. I'm going to extend your supply curve here. You can see that the supply curve of US steel producers will be up to 0Q3, and anything higher than P without tariff will be satisfied by Chinese imports. So your supply curve will be disjointed. It will be a combination of just now what I've drawn in red and what I've drawn in blue. The first half is actually satisfied by domestic produced US steel. The production is satisfied by domestic US steel. Beyond that, you realize that none of the because US steels are priced uncompetitively, okay, nobody is going to buy. Okay, and the remaining amount of US steels, okay, will be satisfied by cheap Chinese imports. Okay, so this will be your supply curve. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest part that you need to know. Okay, don't get the PES is infinity part. So all you need to know is, okay, there is a huge number, or there is a sufficiently huge inventories of Chinese steels that US can import, okay, without affecting its price. Okay, therefore your PES is perfectly priced elastic. Remember your PES MINTS. Okay, I stands for inventories, right? It's an assumption. It has to be, yeah, this assumption has to hold. Okay? So now, okay, I want you all to observe carefully. Okay, it's all about before and after. Okay, so you can see that before, okay, I want you all to focus on consumer and producer. Okay, you can see that consumer, okay, is paying price and quantity, right? Okay, and producer is selling at price and quantity. Okay, no, maybe this is not a good example. So let's consider before first. Okay, price and quantity is going to be the ones that are going to receive by the producers and consumer. Okay, so this is nothing new. Okay, let's look at what happens when there is trade. Okay, this is where things becomes interesting, when there's free trade. Okay, we can actually see that when there's free trade, producers, wait, what's going to happen to producers? We see that initially, okay, the producer can sell up to P, right? And they can sell up to OQ. Is everyone following me? OP and OQ. This is what the producers are receiving. Okay, but as the result of free trade, you realize that the producers are selling more or less. Yeah, as a result of free trade. Domestic producers, you realize that they are selling lesser. Initially, they can sell up to OQ, but now, okay, domestic producers will sell up to OQ3. Okay, and the remaining part will be satisfied by import. I will show you what is the import amount. Okay, so you can actually see that, okay, domestic producers, okay, will be worse off with a lower price. Okay, at P without tariff, and they will be worse off at producing lesser, OQ3. Okay, so you can see that, okay, they will experience a fall in production from Q to Q3. Is everyone following me? Now, okay, for consumers, okay, we know that consumers, okay, will definitely benefit, okay, as a result of trade. Why? Okay, because they are going to enjoy a lower price of tariff. Lower price of import. Okay, at SS without tariff. You see that? Okay, so you can see that this is the intersection, okay, of the new demand and supply curve. Do you see that? So it simply tells us that this is the final level of equilibrium quantity of steel that is going to be consumed. Okay, so how do we actually determine that? 0 to Q3 will be satisfied by domestic produced steels. Okay, and the remaining, okay, will be imports here. Imported steel. Okay, and therefore, we can actually deduce two things. Number one, consumers are better off with lower price steels. Okay, from P to P without tariff. And they are going to experience higher quantity of steel consumed from the initial Q all the way up to OQ4. Are you all following me? So we see that actually free trade works wonders, but it works wonders depending on, okay, which perspective you take. Either you are a consumer or producer. Okay, producer will be worse off with free trade. Okay, when they are subjected to competition of cheap imports. Okay, countries that have a genuine comparative advantage, then they will lose out. Okay, from 0Q to 0Q3. So when we use import tariff, or when we use a free trade diagram like this to illustrate, it's important to show who are the winners and who are the losers. Okay, for you to understand better. So you can see that consumers are better off at the expense of producers. So we are not yet at the tariff yet. Okay, so I'm going to show you how a tariff works. So a tariff actually raises the production cost of all your imports. Okay, so it is actually seen as a upward shift in your supply curve. So remember just now I drawn a red line earlier on. Okay, this red line was initially the supply of all your imports, right? Yes. So now, it got artificially raised. Okay, all your per unit import will be higher. So now, how does it work? Okay, we can see that now it's important to identify the new supply curve. Okay, so we can actually see that with a higher, with your supply curve being raised upwards because of import tariff, your new supply curve, I'm going to probably show it in, I'm still thinking what color pen should I use. Okay, maybe I will use pink color. Okay, pink color. Okay, will be 0, Q1, okay, and all the way to the right. So how do I get this pink color? Very important. Okay, you must follow me step by step. Okay, we realize that your import tariff actually distorts the price of your import by making it artificially higher. So in other words, it actually grants shelter or shielding to the domestic firms. Okay, because domestic firms, you realize initially they can produce up to 0 to Q3, right? After that, they are going to surrender all forms of production to imports because they cannot compete. Now, with an import tariff, when it distorts or artificially raise the price of the tariff, we can see that domestic producers can continue to produce beyond Q3. Okay, they can continue to produce beyond Q3 all the way up to Q1. Do you see that? Okay, and after that, then they realize that they no longer have a cost advantage. Okay, the remaining will be satisfied by imported steel. Okay, so I want you all to focus on this little gap here from Q3 to Q1. Okay, this actually tells you this is the amount of sheltering or barriers that is granted to protect domestic producers. Okay, so domestic producers are going to be better off. Later off, I'm going to show you what happens when there is an import tariff. Okay, so we can compare the before and after with what we've illustrated in red here. Okay, so I want you all to also note that because your supply curves cuts your demand at Q2, this will be the final level of quantity of steel consumed, right? So between 0 to Q1 will be satisfied by domestic producers. Between Q1 to Q2, imported steel. So in a nutshell, we see that the amount of imported steel that you import is lesser. Okay, from the red to the pink. So now let us deduce how are producers and consumers going to be affected with a tariff? Okay, so I'm running out of space. Maybe I use here. Okay, with import tariff. So let's compare domestic producers. Okay, so domestic producers, we can actually see that initially they are producing at P without tariff, right? Okay, but as a result of a tariff, this actually entices them to produce up to P tariff. And anything beyond, okay, is going to go to the supply will be replaced by relatively cheaper imports. So we can see that domestic producers are protected with a higher price. Okay, they are better off with higher price at P tariff as compared to what they initially receive from P without tariff. Okay, so they actually receive a slightly higher price. Is everyone following me? And on top of that, we can actually see that domestic producers actually gain a teeny weeny bit of production from Q3 to Q1. Just a little bit. Okay, from Q3 to Q1. So this is how protectionism works. Okay, so when producers, okay, are actually protected with a higher price and they can produce a little bit more, then we can relate to what? Okay, how does it relate to employment? We realize that when there's a greater level of production, there's a greater derived demand for labor. Okay, there will be higher employment of workers. Okay, or any other potential goals that you want to talk about. Okay, consumers, okay, in this case will be worsened off, right? We can see that consumers, initially they pay P without tariff, but now they pay higher price. Okay, so it's not going to be a good sign for all consumers. You won't be happier to pay a higher price, would you? For imports, you wouldn't, right? See, initially consumers are paying P without tariff. Now they have to suck thumb and pay a higher import tariff. And they are going to experience a fall in quantity from Q4 to Q2. Okay, fall in quantity from Q4 to Q2. Do you see that? Okay, so consumers are not going to be any better off. Okay, so the whole story behind this is the distortion effect of an import tariff. So what you need to illustrate is how is it going to favor producers at the expense of consumer, okay, when there's an import tariff. Okay, and then there's one more economic agent involved. Okay, I'm not sure whether you know who is that. Anyone wants to make a guess? Which is the last economic agent involved when there's an import tariff imposed? Okay, good. Okay, we have government. Okay, the government is going to be better off or worse off? Make a guess. Okay, how is the government better off? Okay, so this is where it comes to the picture. We can see that the import tariff is a per unit tax. Okay, so the per unit tax, it is the vertical amount of your tariff. This is a per unit tariff. When there's a per unit tariff, okay, multiplied by your final imports, the final level of an import. Okay, I want you to focus on this particular rectangle. Okay, so this will be your import tariff. Okay, that is going to be given to the government, will be collected by the government. Okay, so the government will be better off with tariff revenue, import tariff revenue. Oh? So now we can see who is better off and who is worse off. Okay, consumers will be worse off, okay, while government and producers will be better off. So when you learn this in school, when school reopen, okay, this diagram can possibly be extended to consumer and producer welfare. Okay, I'm not going to go there, okay, because there is no need to. Okay, hardly tested. Okay, so if there are any cases that you don't understand producer and consumer welfare, you drop me a private message. I'll explain to you privately. So the whole idea behind this, okay, is to focus on Q3 to Q1. Okay, especially how producers are going to be protected between Q3 to Q1. Okay, with a guaranteed higher price that they can produce because of the distortionary effect of import tariff. Is everyone clear? So this is the whole essence of your import tariff. Okay, so some of the limitations, there are 1, 2, 3. I'll focus on the first one. The first one is the most important one. Okay, so you realize that it is good, okay, to inhibit import, right? So do you think that governments can happily impose tariff as and when that they like? No. Why? You realize that if you impose a tariff on others, can others do the same? Hey, they can also retaliate, right? So if your goal is to correct balance of trade deficit, balance of payment, when you block imports, with import tariff, good. On one end, you're going to be better off in steel production. But on the other end, if the other countries impose a tariff on the goods that you sell to them, for instance, US sell what? Maybe sell car, maybe sell aeroplane or whatever. Beef, yes, US is known to sell beef. Then other countries like China can impose a import tariff on beef. Then it will be a zero-sum game, right? So remember, retaliation is the most important part. You don't want to engage in a trade war with others. So a couple of years back, 1 or 2 years back, you may want to research on the US and China trade war. I believe it was tested last year as the CLT in A-levels. It was struck out last year or the year before. I believe there'll be recurring themes. So if you really want to prepare for your case study or essay, you may want to deepen your research on the trade war between US and China. So tariff and quotas are one of the more common used ones. Focus on tariff. So the next thing about tariff diagram is often abuse. When I mean abuse, I don't mean abusive relationship. But it simply means that students, they often whack or often use it without understanding why they use it. So like I've said, when whatever that you learn, unless there's an absolute need to use a diagram, if not, don't use. Clear? So I'm going to move on to the correction part. The correction part, I believe, is a Q1, Q3. This is the correction part, Q1, Q3. Can you all join me in the correction part? I just want to be sure. In fact, I've actually uploaded a correction on the just want to be correct. Q1, Q3. Help me correct this. I'm not going to go through the diagram here. I just want to bring out to your attention. Alright, so now I want to move on to expenditure switching and expenditure reducing. This is also important. This one, listen carefully. So the way how you propose policies to correct your balance of payment or balance of trade deficit. Remember, protectionism is all about X minus M, right? Very balance of trade or balance of payment centric. So the term that you use to correct balance of trade and balance of payment deficit has to adjust accordingly. So we are no longer concerned about expansionary monetary, expansionary fiscal. So these are not our concerns. So we want to look out for expenditure switching, expenditure reducing. These are our main two. So I'm just going to make a quick differentiation. I'm going to quickly differentiate the two. Before that, maybe you all want to try. What is the key difference between the two? When I look at expenditure, I look at import expenditure. Yeah. How can we differentiate the two other than spelling? I'll give you a hint. If you look at the earlier diagram, switching means what? It simply means that we are going to inhibit. We are going to inhibit imports and promote domestic consumption of a good. So there must be an intended target, right? So we are going to inhibit import and promote domestic consumption of a good. So this is the rough idea behind that. So Policies that we often use are known as what? Okay, import tariff. Okay, import tariff can actually result in a switching behavior, right? Switching from imports to domestic production. Okay, another one that is widely used is currency devaluation. Okay, just now we actually see this here, currency manipulation. See? Currency manipulation can work out very well, in switching. Okay, when your imports are going to be relatively more expensive than your consumed domestic goods. Okay, so expenditure reducing on the other end, there is no such thing as switching towards a domestic good. Okay, so some of the more conventional policies that like a contractionary fiscal policy or monetary policy. I'm just going to use fiscal policy for example. It's a typical illustration of expenditure reducing policy. Okay, so let me show you how it works. Okay, a contractionary fiscal policy, for instance, when you raise your personal income tax, right? This will lower your disposable income and your purchasing power. Okay, this is quite standard. Okay, this is what we learn under your fiscal policy, right? And we also learn that it will reduce your consumption, right? Okay, but here's how you want to relate to expenditure reducing. When there's a fall in purchasing power, there will be a fall in demand for imports, right? Okay, because of a loss in your disposable income, you're going to acquire lesser imports. Okay, so in other words, both your consumption and your import is going to go down. Demand for import is going to go down. Okay, so there is no switching to domestic consumption here. Both of them are going to go down. That's why it's called expenditure reducing. So primarily, when we talk about balance of payment or balance of trade deficit, let me repeat. If the question is specific about balance of trade deficit, they're asking you to propose policies. Make sure you're able to use either expenditure switching, which is a form of import tariff, or you can propose currency depreciation or devaluation. That's subjected to whether you are able to use that, whether your monetary policy allows you to use that. Most of the time, we are looking at import tariff. Okay, the second policy that you want to consider is expenditure reducing policy. Okay, so when you use expenditure reducing policy, you do not want to talk about demand side policies, because they are targeting different aspects. We are focused on reducing demand for imports here. All right, the third policy that you possibly want to consider is supply side policy. Supply side policy, in this case, can be used to promote competitiveness of your exports in terms of price and non-price competitiveness. I believe I've covered this under supply side policy, right? Quite extensively. So make sure you, if you're not sure what I'm referring to, refer to the supply side policy part, and switch and quickly go scrub through the part on balance of trade. How the supply side policy actually improves your balance of trade, through the price and the non-price competitive side. So you realize that the first two, is going to lower import. The last one is going to promote export. The first two is going to lower your import. So your entire approach and framework when we are referring to balance of trade deficit, correct them, has to adjust accordingly, into these three policies: ES, ER, and supply side policy. This one can be covered in the previous lesson. These two are the newest incumbent or newest entrant into the syllabus that you are learning. So for those who have not encountered ES and ER, they are likely to be in your balance of payment or balance of trade notes. If not, it will be under protectionism. Look out for these two terms. For those who are self-schooling, then I've attached some notes in the LMS. You can look out for these two terms as well. Depending on what school you want to use. Okay. Done copying. I'm going to move on now. Okay, so then the last part that I'm going to be concerned about, okay, this one, good chance to come out in case study and essay. So they are asking you, why do we want to protect? Why do we don't want to protect? So when you cover this in your school, okay, you have to know that, okay, every story has two sides. Okay, when you listen to story, you cannot listen from one friend alone, right? You need to listen, you need to have a wider perspective. Okay, so all the points in your school notes can be refuted, okay, with the against side. So you need to map your school notes properly. Okay, on one end, they'll give you one factor. You need to link this factor to how it's not going to happen. I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so now let's flip to page 137, everyone. So I've given you all a very simple 3 points example. Arguments for and arguments against. Okay, let us quickly look out for the left side. Okay, why do we need to protect? Okay, the first one, we want to protect because we want to improve our balance of payment, right? And a balance of trade, right? Okay, X minus M will be maximized, right? Just now we went through that. And this will improve our balance of trade and balance of payment. So far, so good? Okay, so when you study this, make sure you map it out, okay, with the against factor. Okay, so for instance, when your rationale is to improve your balance of trade, you have to correct your balance of trade deficit. What happens if other countries retaliate? Would you be in a better shape or worse shape? If they impose import tariff on your goods, then in that case, may not necessarily be better off, right? So this is how you want to learn. 1 point can be split into 2 camps, depending on which camp you take lah. Okay, but you must know that there are 2 camps, for and against. Clear? And in your school notes, okay, there will be guaranteed at least 7 points. Do we need to know all 7 points, ladies and gentlemen? We don't need to know all, right? And that's what is explained in the quiz earlier on. There's a lot, okay, but you need to exercise your judgment. What is important and what is not. Okay, so this is a simplified illustration. I use BID here. Okay, in your school notes, there's a lot more. What sunset, sunrise industry, strategic industry. Okay, so all these are not difficult concepts. Okay, how you want to study is for and against. All right, remember just now I covered about cover and vault. Okay, some of the points that are used in vault also can use. Okay, the point on structural unemployment. Okay, if you look at your school notes, it will be translated into sunset industry. For instance, we want to protect sunset industry. Why? Okay, because when we subject to trade, there will be import substitution. Then particular industries will be severely affected. Right? Okay, so on one end it is good. But on the other end, okay, we know that sunset industries are industries that are going to die, right? Agreed? That's why it's called sunset industry. It's not called sunrise industry. Okay, so the argument for that would be what? Okay, so if this industry is no longer competitive, okay, what the government can do is, instead of blocking imports, protecting sunset industry, why not open them up, subject them to competition, and slowly transit away, right? Provide adequate skills training, whatever, okay, to help the disrupted industry to upgrade their skill sets and find job in another area. Okay, so sunset industry is a widely used point. Okay, but like I said, okay, it's always looking at 2 camps, whether you are supporting or whether you're not supporting. Okay, so I'm going to go through the other 2, okay, and then I'll probably wrap it up. Like I said, there's a lot of points here. You don't need to know all. Okay, so long as you understand good enough, no need to memorize this one. Okay, I brought up the important ones though. Okay, the second one, okay, we will see is what we call protect infant industries. Okay, what does infant industry stands for? Infant means that what? Babies, right? Okay, babies are what? Susceptible to external shock, right? Okay, especially when you're competing with foreign competition. Okay, you realize that foreign competitors are going to be okay, more established, more mature. And therefore, okay, the government will want to block foreign imports as long as they can. So if you want to use infant industries, you often have to pair it with EOS diagram. So if you don't have a concept of EOS, then you better not use lah. If not, you're digging your own grave, right? So I'll just quickly run through how does the EOS diagram look like. Okay, so this can be found under your firms and decision, okay, under your economies of scale. Okay, you can join me in drawing this. You can draw this at the side of your book. Okay, with your cost, okay, and revenue. Okay, and this is your quantity. Okay, and this is your LRAC, not LRAS. Okay, I see a lot of second year students label this as LRAS. Okay, AS is AS, AC is AC. Okay, we are using a different framework here. Okay, so for those who still remember, okay, do you all still remember what's the name of the minimum point? There's a particular illustration on name of minimum point of LRAC. What do you know there? Yeah lah, okay, good. Nino, okay, what's the full name? Do you still remember? MES is correct. But what does MES stands for? See? Minimum efficient scale. So it simply tells us that this is the lowest point of your LRAC, the point that tells you this is the best cost and output combination. Okay, lowest cost and output combination. This is a C minimum. Okay, I'll call it CMES. Okay, and QMES. So ideally, the firm should be here. To be producing here to fully exploit your economies of scale, right? So when you use this diagram, okay, you have to illustrate what is the role of startup. So we can see that the startup firms, they are probably going to be here. Okay, cost startup. Okay, they are going to be saddled with very high fixed costs or startup costs. Right? And because of intensive competition from foreign imports, okay, they are unable to specialize. If they are unable to specialize, they are unable to exploit your economies of scale. So they cannot move downwards. You see that? So the whole idea is to allow them to move downwards through imposing of imports, import barriers, okay, import tariff, import quota. Okay, so that your startup can move downwards and exploit the economies of scale. Okay, so what is the counterpoint of this? See, until they are mature enough, they can reap economies of scale, then they can compete. Then in that case, then we withdraw the trade barriers. Now, ideally, this is good lah, right? But in reality, okay, does it work? Okay, so we can see that often or not, it creates the opposite, right? You can see that when you protect a baby too often, it will become what? Overly reliant, right? If you have niece and nephew, you probably will observe that, right? What happens when what happens when the mom and dad steps in too often? Yeah. So in other words, okay, the startup firm, okay, or the infant industry, okay, will be overly reliant on protectionism. Okay, they cannot function on their own. Okay, I want to make a correction. Okay, so this will become productive inefficient. Not allocative, productive. I'm so sorry. So in other words, okay, when infant industries are very they're very used to protectionism, okay, they realize that they are going to have an unfair advantage over their foreign import cousins. So they will not be incentivized. They will not be incentivized to find the lowest production means. Okay, they'll often be what? Okay, cost inefficient, right? If you know that you're going to be protected, then what's the point of finding the lowest cost means, right? Okay, so when we move on to when I cover in the first year program, I will cover this concept of X inefficiency or complacency. Okay, this is likely related to X inefficiency. Yeah, so if you're not sure what I refer to X inefficiency, come to the first year class. I'll explain more. Okay, it's not the right time here. Alright, okay, you realize that the third point is called dumping. Okay, so dumping is what you don't, it's not what you do every morning. That's a different kind of dumping. Okay, when we refer to dumping here, okay, refer to read the definition here. Okay, it simply tells us that the foreign imports, okay, they are going to be sold at a lower price compared to domestic goods, and often below the marginal cost. Okay, so how can foreign imports be sold below marginal cost? Because they must receive some form of illegal subsidy, right, from their government. Okay, so this is what we call export subsidies. Okay, so some of the governments are going to promote their particular industries by providing them with export subsidies. So export subsidies, if I'm not wrong, they are prohibited in World Trade Organization. Okay, this is something that is a no-no lah. Okay, so the whole idea of dumping is that, okay, the foreign imports, okay, when they receive unfair advantage, okay, because of illegal subsidy granted by their government, okay, they will drive out, okay, local producers and monopolize the market. Okay, remember just now we covered the concept of market dominance, right? So the foreign imports will dominate the domestic market. Okay, and in the long run, okay, this is going to worsen consumer welfare when, okay, there will be no more domestic producers. Okay, then foreign producers will charge a higher price in the future. So when I was covering this, okay, I'm trying to find I was thinking through what kind of examples are out there. Okay, maybe you guys will want to do a Google search on what are the recent examples of dumping. Okay, so some of the not so recent examples, okay, that I often see on the web is solar panels. Okay, solar panels, and what else I can't recall. Okay, so and there's a good reason why dumping is so hard. It's difficult to get the example. Why? Because dumping, on the other end, is hard to detect. Why? Okay, so we can never be 100% sure that the foreign imports are being dumped, okay, in the domestic market. When it means dump, it means that they receive illegal aid, right? Okay, so it could be that the foreign imports genuinely have a comparative advantage, and they have a lower production cost. Okay, so this is something really hard to pinpoint. Okay, and if we were to pinpoint wrongly, then domestic consumer welfare will be worse off, right? Because they have to suck it up with more costly imports. Okay, so hard to detect. So remember, when you study this, every point will have a flip side of the same coin. Okay, so make sure you know the same coin, the two sides of the same coin. Okay. Alright, okay, I'm going to move on to some rather fun things to look out for. Okay, so yes. Okay, we can see that this is a present example of sanctions as imposed by governments around the world on Russia, right? Okay, so you realize that these days sanctions are no longer that concerned about trade anymore. Okay, a lot of terms can be loosely used. Okay, so you can see here. Okay, some of the sanctions are also targeted at what? Okay, restraining exports of, see, Japan. They're not going to sell semiconductors to Russia. It has nothing to do with protectionism here, right? Okay, so let's look out for something that is see, Canada is going to restrict their exports of aerospace and mining to Russia. Let's look out for, can you all help me look out in this diagram? I'm not sure whether is it big enough. Okay, which are the ones that are related to what we covered today? Are there any mentionings of blocking of Russian imports? You see, UK's one is even more, even more weird, right? Do you see that? Can you all read the UK? Quite hard. Okay, maybe I resize this. Can you all see that? The UK's one is a little bit more weird. Okay, nothing to do with trade exports and imports. See this one. This one. US one is probably more targeted. You see this? US blocking Russia's technology and defense import. Okay, they are not going to buy any more space shuttles from Russia. And US and Russia used to work closely together in space projects, right? NASA or something. Okay, so I would say out of this entire diagram, probably US is the one that is closest. Probably. Okay? So these are some of the modern days of how sanctions are used. Okay, they are not pertaining towards trade sanction alone. Okay, these sanctions can be towards individuals, suspension of visas for individuals, blocking human capital flow. Okay, and assets flow as well. See, freezing of assets. So not so much of trade sanctions these days. Okay, anyway, Russia don't export a lot of things, right? The only thing that they export are what? Natural gas, right? Right? And have you all heard of the irony that, even though there's an ongoing war, the West, or the Western Europe is still importing a lot of natural gas from Russia, and they're still financing the war despite fighting the same war. So you realize that it's really quite interesting and quite fun. Okay, and until the Western Europe can find a substitute for oil, natural gas from Russia. Yeah, no, Gazprom is their main oil player. Yes. Okay, so past example. Okay, maybe I use this as an example. Anyone takes history here? History. Oh, I know Nino takes history, right, Nino? Okay, then you probably will know this. Anybody knows what's the story behind this? No, there's no price behind this. But how is this related to protectionism? Good, Nino. Anyone else? One of the earlier students tell me this is related to Tiananmen Square, right? Yes. Does it look like Tiananmen Square? Tiananmen Square wasn't built at that time, okay? Not at that time. This is the post-Mao era, around the Mao era. Alright, so this is the Opium War. Okay, Opium War is fought where? At least you all should know Opium War is fought where. Do you all know the destination of Opium War? Okay, it was fought in China, right? Okay, who are the parties involved in Opium War? Obviously, Chinese are involved, right? Okay, who else is involved? Who are the ones in red? Who wears red? Okay, good, I think I'm going to start asking you because you probably know everything. Yeah, I forgot you take it. Yeah. Anyone else? The ones in red are the breeds, right? Okay, if you go to the Queen's Palace, you realize that they still wear red, right? So what's the context? What started the Opium War? Hey, Nino can continue. Maybe you can ask Nino to share. Maybe Nino want to unmute. Okay, can you share with us some historical context or what? Okay, foreign traders has been illegally exporting opium mainly from India to China. Okay, trade grew dramatically from about 1820. Okay, so you can see that on the left side, we realize that opium, is a demerit good, right? Okay, it can leave people habitually hooked into the good. Agreed? And can weaken, worsen the non-material standard of living for Chinese. Chinese tried to suppress this, which led to war. So there's a backstory behind this. I happen to know a little bit more history because I watched a lot of all these YouTube clips. So the backstory behind this was, do you know that the UK was running a trade deficit, not trade surplus? They're running a trade deficit with China, meaning to say China is selling a lot more of goods and services to UK. So now, let you all make a guess. Okay, what is the main cause of trade deficit? That happens before the war. So two parties, right? China and UK. Okay, so UK is running a trade deficit with China. So can you all guess, okay, what is the particular good that UK is importing a lot more from China? Ah, good. I don't know whether, okay, but okay, good try. Okay, so you realize that, okay, tea. Okay, UK is consuming a lot of tea. Okay, and they are importing a lot from China. Okay, and you realize that, okay, because of a persistent trade deficit, then, okay, UK actually start to harbor some ill ideas, right? Okay, how do I reverse this trade deficit? How do I do that? Okay, by like what Nino has mentioned, okay, beginning to introduce opium consumption, okay, into China. Okay, and you realize that because of, okay, illegally smuggling or exporting a lot of opium into China, okay, this actually corrected the trade deficit. Okay, so in other words, okay, the trade surplus that China experienced now becomes a trade deficit because they are importing more opium than the export of tea leaves to UK. Okay, so the Emperor of China said, enough is enough. Okay, I want to close all the trading port. Okay, then you realize that, I'm not sure whether you all heard of this governor called Lin Zexu. You all can go and Google it. Lin Zexu, right? Okay, so he was the guy that burned all the opium at I think it's at Shenzhen, the present place at Shenzhen. He burned all the opium, and it triggered the opium war. Okay, so the breeds are not particularly happy when the opiums are burned. Okay, and the trading ports in Guangdong is closed. Okay, and this actually triggered the opium war. Yeah, so the breeds demanded that the ports to be open. Okay, and trading of opium to remain. Yeah. Okay, so long story short, we can see that history repeating over again, right? Okay. In this case, the particular cause of conflict within Russia and Ukraine is not particularly the same. Okay, but okay, there has to be some form of trade tensions as well. Huh? Okay, so I hope you guys learn a little bit about Chinese history. Okay, it's quite fun. Okay, if you have time, okay, you can go to YouTube or Google that. All right. So with this, okay, I will quickly end off with the exam purpose. Number one, okay, do not spam the tariff diagram. Use but not abuse. Okay, so long as you understand the concept behind tariff, okay, good enough. Next, okay, you got to differentiate between expenditure switching and expenditure reducing policies to correct balance of trade and balance of payment deficit. Okay, and you have to use these particular two concepts to illustrate. Huh? Okay, so if you start proposing contractionary fiscal and monetary policy, you're off tangent. Okay? So with this, okay, let's go for a really short break. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm running a bit short in time. When you're back, okay, we will kickstart with our time prep. Okay? See you in a short while. Questions you can ask me. You're back. Okay, turn on your webcam. We're running a bit short. Right, Ravati, when you're back, let me know. Yeah, thanks. So a quick announcement, ladies and gentlemen. Next Friday, okay, I will have a doctor's appointment in the evening. Okay, I cannot have the class next Friday. Okay, so next Friday's class, you may want to make arrangement to join the Tuesday, Saturday, or Sunday class. Okay, so the respective time slots you all know, right? Huh? Okay, so next week you can join Tuesday, Saturday, or Sunday. Clear? Okay, so with that, okay, let's commence with today's time practice. It's not difficult. Okay, we are looking at question D alone. D for donkey only. Okay, you can cross out C. C is good to know lah. Okay, but we don't have bandwidth to do today. Okay, so okay, please start your writing on question D. It's not difficult. Okay, the particular concept that's in this question was actually covered earlier on. Yeah, I hope you guys don't mess this up. Okay, so 5 minutes. Okay, we'll start now. Good luck. Alright, great. That's it. Time's up. Stop writing. Thank you. So please prepare a green pen. When I mention green, it has to be green. Yeah? Orange, purple, whatever color pen that is not correction. Okay, you guys know. Okay. Now let's look at the answer. So based on the information from the extract, okay, maybe use a question paper better. Okay, explain the protectionist measure implemented by US against Chinese products. Okay, so now tell me, okay, which is the protectionist measure that was identified from the extract? Can you tell me and cite the extract? Cite. 7 tariff. Okay, all tariff. Are there any other form of alternatives out here? Okay, I don't think so. So you can see here, okay, interestingly, okay, US competitors complain that Chinese solar manufacturers get improper government support. Hey, what like that? Okay, maybe I erase this. Okay, I'll just use the pen. Okay, improper government support in the form of low cost access to land, bank loans, and resources. Okay, what concepts were all these circled ones? What do they cover? Just now we covered this concept earlier on. What was the particular concept where there's a form of improper government support? Very good, Aiden. But probably it's a verb, not a noun. Okay, thanks. Okay, and then who else? Okay, so far only Aiden got it right. The rest? I covered this under arguments for and against protectionism. The last point. Okay, under the D word. What does the D word suggest? Dumping, right? You can see here. Okay, all the US, the Chinese manufacturers, okay, they receive export subsidies. Yeah. And that's why there's a need to impose trade barriers, trade tariffs, especially import tariffs. I'm not sure whether are there any other form. Oh yeah. Okay, contended that the Chinese currency is currently undervalued. Okay, so it seems like, okay, there is a currency, some form of currency manipulation as well, some form. Okay, but primarily we want to look out for tariff. This is the focus of the day. Okay, currency manipulation probably can. Okay, but like I say, today's focus is on tariff. Okay, so I hope all of you have used tariff. Okay, so now, okay, let's look out for, okay, point by point. If you have import tariff, you'll get yourself 1 mark. Okay, make sure you cite extract 7. All of y'all have your first mark. So how does a tariff work? So the second mark goes to illustrate how does a tariff raises the supply, or rather reduces the supply. This causes an upward shift in your supply curve. Keywords you want to relate to: marginal cost of Chinese imports is going to go up, and this reduces the supply of imports into the US market and results in higher prices. Okay, remember, okay, it's SS, is your SS without tariff to SS with tariff. You know, that was a particular diagram that we used earlier on. Okay, where is it? Disappeared. See, SS without tariff to SS with tariff. Okay, so your supply curve actually upward shift or it reduces. Next, okay, with prices of Chinese products increasing, okay, the price of locally produced substitutes may become relatively cheaper. So you can actually see just now what I mentioned in the okay, you can see here. Okay, this particular upward movement. Okay, do you see this? Okay, I'm going to box this up. Okay, this particular area down here. Okay, so it simply tells us that, okay, when your price of your imports goes up, this actually shelters domestic producers, right? So the illustration will be this. The price of locally produced substitutes may be relatively cheaper now. Okay, when it means by relatively cheaper, okay, it simply means relatively cheaper as compared to P without tariff. Okay, so now P with tariff is going to be more costly, right, as compared to P without tariff. So, okay, domestic producers can utilize this opportunity to increase their production. And you can see that, okay, consumers are going to buy domestic products from 0 to Q1 instead of 0 to Q3 initially. So this is how the substitution comes into the picture. The price of locally produced substitutes may become relatively cheaper and cause consumers to switch from Chinese products to locally produced products. Okay, so this will cause the quantity demanded for locally produced goods to increase. Okay, particularly Q1 to Q3 to Q1. You don't need to draw the diagram, it's for you to understand. Okay, and this will lead to, okay, a form of benefit or a form of macro objective that the government can extract. So what can you talk about? Okay, remember, see? Implemented by the US. So the US is, if the US is concerned about protecting domestic firms, okay, then they are concerned about the employment rates, right? Okay, because firms, okay, will employ more workers, okay, when there is a higher derived demand for labor. Okay, so for this question, you don't need to no need go straight to the tariff part. Don't need to go one big cycle, tell me the free trade. The free trade context is to show you, okay, what happens before. Okay, but the question is showing what happens after. So don't tell me before when the question is testing you after. Okay? So the key catch here, okay, is to, if you guys miss out, okay, whatever keywords that were mentioned here, okay, this is the particular one that you want to bring up. Switching. Okay, so the switching part occurs between Q1 and Q3. Oh, okay, so domestic consumers will switch from imports to domestic consumption between Q3 to Q1 before they consume the remaining, okay, imported steel or imported whatever from Q1 to Q2. Okay, so Q3 and Q1 is the star, the MVP of the entire illustration. Okay, so any more questions, I'll be happy to address. This is probably the first time that you encounter a tariff question. So I don't fault y'all, okay, if you guys don't get it right. Okay, at least y'all get the concept of switching proper embedded in your head. Okay, I think it's good enough. Okay, switch from what to what? Okay, switch from imports to domestic consumption. Okay, so I am going to drop, okay, the answer key in the Zoom chat. Okay, make sure you make a copy of this. Okay, you can do your correction and you can submit by tonight 2359. Okay, submission is optional. Okay, you don't submit, I don't mark. Okay, but 2359 with correction in green and only green. So with that, okay, that's it. If you have questions, stay back and ask for FAQ. If not, I will see you next week. Okay, the year 1 class happening right after this will be the same link. Okay, thanks, bye.